Good morning. Happy Thursday morning. Excited to be with you here on See You in the AM again. Again, it is one of our Q&A days. We're going to answer questions, choosing one question from our audience, people that have submitted those to us, and getting an answer. We're trying to choose questions for the show, as I mentioned the other day, that are more general, more relative to the mass number of people versus very specific questions. But please do not hesitate to get those over to us. As I've said before, as specific as you want. If it's even an objection that you're struggling with, a prospect in the past, and just want some ideas on how to overcome that better, I'm happy to engage and share my knowledge and some thoughts on it. Doesn't mean it's the only way, but definitely happy to share some other ways of approaching that with a prospect, helping you to be more successful the next time you encounter that. So anything that you have questions on, please continue to send them over to us, messaging, or as I've said before, you could always email them at info@creatingclosers.com. So let's just jump right into things today. The question that we're going to answer today is, I believe, one of the most important tricks, and I don't like using that term, but it's the best term for it, to trick ourselves to success. I was asked by a girl, her name is Kendra, she's out on the West Coast in Tacoma, Washington, and she said, how do I remember to focus on all of these things? I'm assuming that by your question, Kendra, you're referring to all these different ideas that we're talking about, whether it's confidence, consistency, whether it's clarity, whether it's conversation, any of the 4 C's, or then again, any of these things, listening skills, asking questions. I mean, and it goes on and on and on. There's many more skills. So it's obviously a valid question to be asking. How do you juggle all of this? Well, my first response to you is, and I've said this before, but again, I'm happy to clarify, you can't do everything at once. You have to choose what areas you need to focus on and work on it. Now, stay focused on it and continue to work on it until you, I don't want to say mastered it, but have gotten to a point where you're ready to add another layer. Being a closer and being successful in sales, it takes work and continued effort. It's not going to happen overnight. Anyone expecting that magic pill, it does not exist. So again, we've got to work and continue to grow. Now, specifically to answer your question, how do you remember to focus on all these things? Again, let's take it a step further. How do you even remember to focus on the one thing? Now, there's many people that I've worked with when I was in management of sales, working with individuals within a company itself, and we always employed different tricks, as I said, which we called triggers. Some kind of an act. Now, again, a mental thought is not necessarily an act. That's a thought. So keeping in mind, like for example, and it sounds silly, but snapping a rubber band on your wrist or touching something that is on your desk, something to trigger a thought and then therefore a feeling and a focus. So for example, worked with people that had issues with over talking. I remember to this day a girl named Jennifer that I've worked with, in one of my favorite examples. I had her take an empty package of Imodium, which most people know is for diarrhea, and not because she had any stomach issues, but the old saying, diarrhea of the mouth, talked a lot, over talked tremendously. And putting that in front of her work area and touching it, literally physically touch that before making a call to trigger the thought in her mind to be conscious of the over talking. The more she was conscious of it, the better she became. So she ended up becoming one of our top producing representatives in the company, and not only because of this, but this was a critical piece of that puzzle. So I will absolutely suggest to you and to anybody out there, create triggers for yourself. Create something physical that, like a trigger on a gun, is a physical thing. It's not just a thought that will connect for you a reminder to be focused on what it is you're working on. By employing tactics like this, you're setting yourself up for success. That's having a goal and an action plan to achieve it, and then therefore making it happen. So again, stay focused on that. Do your best to create the trigger. And if any of you have any other questions about how to do so or some ideas for it, by all means, engage me. I'm happy to answer those for you as well. And we'll just wrap things up with a quote from Dennis Waitley, who says, there are 2 primary choices in life: to accept conditions as they exist, or accept the responsibility for changing them. Kendra, I give you credit because, again, by reaching out and asking that question, you're taking responsibility for changing them versus accepting them as they exist. So let's all take a note from that message and take responsibility for ourselves and make changes for the positive. Let's just make changes to be successful. Let's have an awesome and successful day, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we wrap up the week. See you in the AM.